Hello everyone, Sat Shri Akal. Welcome to the Crypto Khalsa. With us today is Miss Periwinkle. She's the CTO of a very amazing protocol that I've read. It's called Glittr.fi, and we'll be starting off with some interesting questions about Perry. So Perry, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about your role at Glittr?
Yeah, so I'm co-founder and CTO of Glittr. This has really kind of been like my baby, my brainchild now since we've started it. I think if I'm anything, at heart, I'm an academic. I've been in and out of crypto since 2011. I was like the kid that started mining on my on my computer in high school. But this is the first project that I've had like truly as a founder and executive and a leader. So it's given me a lot of like joy to have this research freedom and get to like figure out how to build stuff. Like I said, my background's pretty academic. I did a PhD at NYU and I was at Meta for many years working on various security and cryptography things. But Web3 and crypto has always been like a home for me. And so it's been very, very exciting to come back to it and do it like truly full time now in on my own project.
Exciting. So how did you first get involved with Glittr, and what inspired you to become part of this team?
Yeah, so my co-founder is an old friend of mine, and he's been doing crypto full time for at least 5 or 6 years. He came to me earlier this year and was just like, Perry, this is the time, like Bitcoin's hot, the ecosystem's hot, it's popping off. He was like, here's this runes paper, you should read this. And kind of like got me excited about it again. And so we didn't actually start with Glittr. We started with like, all right, we're going to do something this time. We've talked about it for how many years? Like this time we're going to build something. And we sat around like honestly in my kitchen, just like with a whiteboard, an actual literal whiteboard, just throwing ideas around. And his mantra with this was, I want DeFi on Bitcoin that like I as a maxi would use. I'm not going to bridge my Bitcoin. I don't want to use an L2. I feel like all of these other multi-sigs, like I don't like the trust properties, but I want to be able to get yield out of Bitcoin. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And so I sat down like pen and paper and started thinking about like, okay, if I was going to try to build such a system, how would I do it? I was scribbling, I mean, notebook after notebook after notebook. And I kind of had a breakthrough one day. I was like, I think I actually figured out how to build it. And so I went to work on Monday and I quit my job at Meta and I came back and I've been doing this full time for I guess about 6 months now. But yeah, it was the team originally, myself and my co-founder Nick, who's the CEO, and we just hired a bunch of people within the last couple of months. So we have a team of 8 now. I've got 5 developers working on the project, and it's been really exciting to see it go from like my head to a white paper to a website to now something that we actually just we're sponsoring a hackathon the last couple of days here and had the first actual app built on Glittr. So it's really cool to see it come together.
Okay. So let's talk about a bit of your excitement about the technology that you have built.
Yeah.
And what kind of problem are you guys really solving through Glittr?
Yeah, so I think from our perspective, it is again there's this whole ecosystem around DeFi on Bitcoin, and it has a lot of different people building a lot of different things and really interesting tech. For us, we felt like what was important was having the slightly different trust assumptions and properties than some of the other solutions, because many of the other solutions out there they're a multi-sig bridge, they're an L2, they're some other sort of thing, which is, I'm not fudding that. There's use for that, but we wanted something that was truly natively on Bitcoin. You're not leaving the Bitcoin blockchain. You're not adding extra layers. And that was the main inspiration and use case. So like, our system runs at block time. Glittr transactions are, they're based in op return, so they're literally Bitcoin transactions. We try to stay basically as native to Bitcoin as possible. And the reason for that is I think people always talk about like, oh, there's this $1 trillion of liquidity in Bitcoin that should be in DeFi, but the vast majority of it's not really liquid because institutions and whales are just not comfortable with the risks that are inherent in a lot of the existing solutions. So I think that's our goal, is our hope is to be able to actually access some of that liquidity by building a system that people can feel safe using.
Okay. Let's talk about a bit about the technology for the listeners, and I think that's something that you are very much comfortable in. And so, could you give us an overview of what Glittr.fi does, and what are some of its key features, and how does it really differentiate from other platforms which already exist in the market?
Yeah, so Glittr is a smart contract platform for building on layer one native Bitcoin. It's a Rust-based indexing and validation protocol that is done post-mining. So if you think about how runes work, there's some similarities there. You have the body of a Glittr transaction lives in the op-return block and mined, and then it goes to Glittr nodes, which validate it. It's a UTXO-driven model, so we are not taking the account approach that other smart contract platforms like ETH and Solana have, the account model. So we've instead borrowed ideas from a bunch of different places to make it more consistent with the way that Bitcoin works, which allows us to keep closer to the Bitcoin primitives. So you have, as a developer, you build your app, you issue your Glittr transactions, they're mined, and then they're picked up, validated by the Glittr network. And then there's the secondary consensus that's provided by Glittr nodes. But one of the things I think is a major differentiator is just how cheap it is to run, because it relies mostly on client-side computation. So your nodes aren't actually processing the smart contracts. They're the transactions or contract calls provide an input and an output. So they're only validating. Like if you think about how we do, like we're not a ZK system, but ZK systems have that, right, where it's a proof. So computing the proof is very expensive, but verifying the proof is constant time.
Correct.
And Glittr is similar. The verification is very cheap. It's not super stateful, so it's like memory efficient, it's computationally efficient. And this is important just because Bitcoin as a system is pretty slow and memory constrained. So we've really made a distinct point to optimize for the efficiency of the system. In comparison to other things on the market, like there's a trade-off there, right? It's slower because it runs at block time, but it also is as close to trustless as I think you can get. Once you're within the Glittr ecosystem, contracts truly are permissionless, they're trustless, anyone can call them, they're always validated, there's no third-party custody, there's this sort of like custody by consensus that you would see in ETH. I think from my perspective, this is the biggest differentiator, is just from an indexer perspective, if you want to be a part of the Glittr network, you could do that on a Raspberry Pi. So our hope is that creates lots and lots of nodes and therefore a very decentralized system, which is important. And then from like an LP perspective, just that you don't have this trusted party with a multi-sig bridge or some other sort of thing. Yeah, I think those are the things for me that are like the most important differentiators.
Okay. And how do the developers use your platform to develop something of their own? How do they typically use it?
So building on Glittr is actually super easy. The protocol itself is like quite complicated, but you don't have to understand it. So we've provided a SDK. Right now it's available in TypeScript. We're planning to add support for other languages, but when we've asked developers, like, what do you like to build in? The answer has been TypeScript, so that's what it is. But it's a SDK full of like methods, right, that are composable. So if you want to write a contract in Glittr, you say, okay, let's mint an asset. What are the asset minting requirements? And then you have,
Correct.
things that you can, okay, and also I want to add a vesting schedule. So or I need to add an oracle here and just put in an oracle block.
Okay.
So building with it is actually really straightforward because it's very easy to understand in the code. In the back end, it looks terrible. Like in the back end, then, because it has to be reduced to a whole bunch of 2-bit enums and everything just for the compression aspect of it, right? And then compressed and everything. And the Rust code that processes it is also very complicated. But building on it, like you don't have to actually know Web3. You don't have to have experience with Solidity or anything like that. It's literally just TypeScript. Like I was saying, we were sponsoring a hackathon the last couple of days, and somebody managed to build a whole app on Glittr literally in 24 hours because it's
It means the documentation is pretty straightforward. It is very
Yeah.
easy to build on Glittr,
yeah,
which is a good news for the future developers.
right.
To build something on Glittr is very easy and too easy to deploy as well.
Yeah, and we hope that we will be able to attract developers from other places in the Web3 ecosystem, obviously. But actually, for me, I think one of the things that's exciting is the capacity to attract developers that aren't already in the Bitcoin or Web3 ecosystem. Because when I talk to people that are the founders of other infrastructure projects, whether they're our competitors or our friends or often both, everybody has a few things you need. Obviously, you need funding, you need some things, but developers are a really hard thing to find. They're a really constrained resource. And so I'm hoping that because we've got this system, which is really, really easy to build with, we're able to bring in people from Web 2, right? Or just even college students that want to build some fun, meme coin app or whatever, because you can fire it up in a weekend in TypeScript. So that's also, I think, I answer every question. Like, this is one of the things I'm most excited about. I'm very excited about
So
it.
let's deep down. Let's talk more about the technology stack of Glittr. Apart from TypeScript, I think TypeScript is just the front end.
Right.
Let's talk more about the back end.
Yeah.
What happens in the background? So once a code is developed on your TypeScript app, which is deployed on Glittr, what happens then? How do you like differentiate it from what others are already doing it?
Right. So the flow would be you write in TypeScript, then the library packages that up into heavily compressed bytes, and those bytes are put into the op return field of the Bitcoin transaction. When you issue the transaction, you're actually just issuing a Bitcoin transaction. So if you think about like runes, right, also lives in op return. That goes to the mempool, goes to the miners, it gets mined. Once the block lands, then Glittr nodes process Bitcoin blocks. They look for op return blocks that are flagged as Glittr transactions. They decompress them, and then they validate those transactions. The code that's running on the validators is a Rust package, and that one is much less pretty than the TypeScript package. It'll also be open source. Anybody can run it, run a node, but it's halfway towards being a compiler almost, because the TypeScript package it's a package, right? It's an SDK, it's not a language. But because we needed to maintain this constant time, low memory aspect, we couldn't make it a language. So we instead are trying to be like, all of the things you want to do, we will give you a building block for that. So what you have then on the validator is something that's like halfway towards being a compiler, because it has to be able to go through all of the things in either the new contract or the contract call or whatever it is, and validate it against the contract when it was created, or the state of the ecosystem, or somebody else's transactions, or whatever it is that it needs to do. So how each particular piece gets validated is different, but the Glittr nodes pick it up and they validate the contract or the contract call or the transaction itself. And then there's a consensus network amongst the Glittr nodes that basically says, okay, in this block, there were 100 Glittr transactions, right? They were in this order, and basically flags any that we don't think were valid. So, if it says number 97.
Once the consensus happens on the Glittr nodes, then it is going forward to the actual Bitcoin transaction.
No, so the Bitcoin transaction happens first. So the Bitcoin transaction happens first, and
then it gets validated to the Glittr node.
Right.
So once the consensus happens, that's the layer 2. That's the second layer of filter that you've added on the Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. So once the secondary consensus happens, because like if you think about like with EVM, right? EVM or ETH contract transactions get mined on ETH, but that only implies that it's a valid ETH transaction. Like it's not double spent. The actual output of that contract call is not guaranteed based on the fact that the transaction is mined. And there's a similar duality with Glittr, right? The fact that it went to the Bitcoin thing and got mined, that verifies that it's not double spent. It verifies potentially other pieces. We rely on tap trees for certain things, but it doesn't guarantee that the contract call itself was valid. So then the Glittr nodes are processing the actual body of the contract call in the same way that you would see with EVM. The difference with EVM is that there is no then affirmative commitment to
Correct.
whether anything's valid. It's assumed that everybody has the same understanding of global state. And with Glittr, again, mostly for efficiency reasons, we have the secondary consensus, which Glittr nodes perform an actual consensus mechanism. And then every so often, every 5-ish blocks, there's another transaction that's written to the blockchain by the Glittr network that says, here were all the, there were 100 transactions and these 2 are wrong.
Okay. In the L2 systems, I think on Ethereum, first the L2 network abstracts, then it sequences all the transaction and throws it to the L1.
Right. Yeah.
But here in Glittr, the transaction first gets mined on Bitcoin, and then it gets validated to an actual like Glittr node, which is interesting. Okay. So let's talk about some of the challenges that you guys faced while developing such a protocol, because initially the idea is just in your head, right?
Yeah.
But when it gets to the paper, it has some of the considerations that you think will work, but in the real life, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
So what are some of the technical challenges that you guys really faced, and what are the considerations that your team did to keep everything in place?
I think the biggest thing we struggle with is just space. Opportune is a really useful data field that lets us keep everything on layer 1. But the opportune limit is 80 bytes, which by any modern computing standard is
very less,
is ridiculous. It's so little. We look at other systems that are using ZK proofs or roll-ups or anything in that space, and that's a really wonderful, obvious solution to this type of thing. But a ZK proof can take, I don't know, a megabyte, which again, by a modern standard is
very less.
Very much not a problem.
It's like we're back to 1970s when we were using floppy disks
to
save data.
Right. A megabyte is fine by any standard of normalcy, especially in Web 2, but Bitcoin is so memory and space constrained that we have to be able to get all of our functionality into 80 bytes. And obviously we're doing 2 layers of compression, so we have more like 250 bytes to work with, but that's still just nothing. So we spend a lot of time saying, okay, we want to add this functionality. How do we do that? Or how do we do that without, I don't know, having a ZK proof, because we just, all the compression in the world isn't going to get us to that. So that's where we end up, I think, having a lot of design challenges, is we say, okay, well, we want to make sure that we can do X, Y, or Z. We can't write a ZK proof, so we have to find a way to provide the appropriate arguments, maybe in clear text, that can be validated in constant time, or we have to find a way to push more of it client side, and then provide an affirmative client side commitment from an agreed upon trusted oracle, right? Because we can do a Schnorr signature in 64 bytes, and we can manage that. But I think that half at least of the technical challenges are just, how do we keep this in very, very, very few bytes.
So since you're not using ZK proof, how exactly did you manage to save data within such a such a small space? What exactly is the tech that you implemented, and what is that one thing that Perry is really proud of that she has built and she solved a real problem?
I wish I could say that it was revolutionary, and it's not. It's just really, really carefully thought out. There's no single, this fixes it. It's, okay, we want to do X functionality. How do we handle that? And so we have a lot of things which are, you expect methods to have certain arguments, and they're flagged very efficiently. A lot of our things, in the end, your TypeScript can look really nice, your methods have names and things, but in the end, there's 4 possible values. And so the way it actually comes out the other side is it's a 2-bit enum. It can be 0, 1, 2, and 3. And those are the only possible values. So everything is reduced to bit flags, enums. There's honestly a lot of just information theory that went into it, which is totally irrelevant, but is one of, I have a couple of random little math algo passions, and I think information theory is really interesting. So that's been a fun challenge, but it's a lot of just clever design, to be honest.
Awesome. Let's talk about future. So when Glittr.fi attracts more users, you're flocked with so many people who are talking about you, what are the measures that you guys are planning to take or have already taken, which are in place to make sure that everyone runs smoothly and you have a reliable response time? How do you make sure that the future customer won't face a problem creating or consuming a Glittr.fi app?
So I don't know that I want to take responsibility for every app that everyone's going to build. The network itself, I think, though, is pretty robust. We've already got some really strong industry partners that are going to come in and set up a whole bunch of nodes. One of the venture firms that has backed us also runs a node network, so they'll be committing, I don't know the exact number, but a fairly large number of the first set of nodes. I'm hoping also just that we're able to create really strong decentralization in indexing and validating just because it's so cheap to run, that I would hope a lot of people are, like I was saying, you could run it on a Raspberry Pi if you wanted to, that a lot of people would just set it up, plug it in. It's a proof of stake system, it's incentivized. So my hope would be that there's a reason to do that and we have strong decentralization. The data availability itself is on Bitcoin. So even if the Glittr node network, I don't know, like went down for a day even, it would be perfectly reconstructable. You could go back to the last time Glittr was working and say, okay, we'll just start there and we'll just have to process a day's worth of transactions instead of usually we do this a block at a time. But it's perfect data availability on Bitcoin layer 1. So as long as Bitcoin's there, you would always be able to restart Glittr, but also it's decentralized. So my hope would be that we don't have that kind of a problem.
Interesting. One thing that I really found very exciting in your while I was reading a documentation is that its user friendliness is at par, and that is something that you confirmed as well when you organized this hackathon. You were able to create a platform where your developers were able to create something in less than a day.
Yeah.
And that's something that showcases a mature documentation that you guys have created. So would you be like, tell us more about what kind of effort went into creating such user-friendly documentations, and how did you like come up with this idea of building such amazing documentations which people can like really use, and within a day they can be up and ready?
This is honestly what I spend a lot of my time on. I am not the main developer on this project. My lead engineer, Irfi, is just cracked, based, whatever words the kids are using these days. I rely on him very heavily. He mostly manages the rest of the engineering team. So he and I spend a lot of time sitting down, looking over the specs. But the documentation is something I mostly do personally, just because this whole thing is kind of my brainchild. So getting it from my head to something that Irfi can understand is a first significant step. And then from something that he understands to something that other people can understand. It's a lot of layers of iteration of, okay, explain to me again, how does this work? Explain again how this works. Let's get an example in here, or even if it's a pseudocode example, because it's very easy to build with because of just a TypeScript library. But I think it can be a slightly different mental model, particularly for people that are coming from Web 2. I think it's the most obvious thing in the world. For people that are coming maybe from EVM, where you're used to writing in Solidity, it's a different way of working.
It's a different experience.
It's more object-oriented, right? So I think that was part of the goal, is to just provide a lot of examples. Okay, if I want to build a collateralized stablecoin, this is where you do it. This is how you put the oracle. This is how you do that. If I want to build, an AMM pool, issue this kind of contract, issue that kind of contract, use this kind of token, use these arguments. I think over time people will build things I haven't spec'd directly. Obviously, I hope that. If I'm spec'ing everything forever, then I've failed. But that's been a lot of it, is making sure that it's robust for at least the use cases that are obvious. And I hope that provides enough inspiration for people to be able to build things that I didn't directly provide an example for.
So let's now, since we are talking about the future, let's talk more about a typical HR question. Where do you see Glittr Finance in the next 3 to 5 years, and where do you see yourself headed, and what are the innovative features that you're already working on, which you plan to release in the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. For me, like I was saying earlier, the research piece of this is the most compelling. Obviously, we all want to go to the moon, we all want to get rich, but the thing I enjoy about this so much, and I know honestly a lot of people in crypto who feel this way, is it's like the research freedom of professorship, but it pays. I look forward to getting this onto mainnet and then building the next piece of it and the next thing on top of it. One thing that we've already started exploring is offering a better, safer, faster peg in, peg out for actual Bitcoin L2s that do run their own blockchains. So providing a glitter peg as opposed to a multi-sig bridge, because I know that's the concern they have. Maybe then we can have the scale and speed that's available on L2s with more of the security properties that Glittr provides. We're looking also at building our own native bridge, which I'm playing with 17 different terms for, but it's something I've designed literally in the last 3 weeks, which is a kind of BitVM protocol, but in a Lightning topology. So instead of having a huge multi-sig BitVM instance, having basically BitVM channels one-to-one between me and whoever issues the stablecoin, which allows in an optimistic sense for immediate peg out, and then kind of, the Lightning Network thing in terms of, peer-to-peer. That is something I want to build like now, but I need to get the protocol finished and up and running and on mainnet first. So I think there's a lot of things like that. Like that's for me personally, right? Like I always have ideas that I want to pursue from a research perspective. The company in the next 3 or 5 years, I mean, we hope that all of that makes it more robust, but just continuing to build cool stuff. Maybe we'll start then issuing, maybe we'll build apps on our own platform as subsidiaries of the company. I don't know what that would look like or what we would want to build. But I think that we just see it, because it's an infrastructure system, as continuing to provide more and do more. And particularly as Bitcoin obviously is all-time high, adoption is increasing. So we'll have to revisit some of the scale and efficiency and speed issues as well, because there's very, constraints.
And are there any new exciting emerging technologies into AI, machine learning, which you might think might impact Glitter's future growth as well? Do you have some emerging technologies that you're already implementing, or something that you're like keenly looking at that might have some exciting opportunities for you in the future?
So the issue with AI is, again, compute. Like everything comes back to this computational efficiency, but it does in many senses. I think there are really interesting opportunities in the crypto ecosystem, in the Web3 ecosystem with AI. I come from a privacy and security background, so I'm particularly interested in having machine learning and AI that is better in terms of privacy, and I think decentralization is a huge part of that. I think realistically, we won't see LLMs built on Bitcoin just because of the throughput issues. So where this could end up working with Glittr, I don't honestly know. I look forward eagerly to the day when someone comes to me and it's like, I want to do it. I want to build this, and I think it's possible, or I'm building an AI L2 and I want to use Glittr as my liquidity connection to Bitcoin. That certainly would be possible, but I'll be honest that this isn't one that I see as an immediate next thing, just because it's so expensive in terms of processing power.
Since we're talking about the emerging technologies, what emerging technologies do you think are going to impact the future of blockchain technology? What are some of the next gen products that you are looking at personally? In what technology space, which are going to impact the future of blockchain?
I think a lot of the things that are most exciting to me are actually in hardware, because we're building on Bitcoin, which is still proof of work, and the hash rate of the network is always going up. And seeing some of the ways that people are innovating there is really helpful. But I think it's also then interesting to see like some of the deep-in stuff and because like how much of Bitcoin mining happens by these very constrained things. So I'm interested to see where we get hardware innovations just for like mining particularly. The ecosystem broadly outside of Bitcoin. I think actually your last question about AI is a really interesting one. And I see now tons of things that are like blockchain AI or we're going to do LLMs or whatever. I'm on a personal level very interested in that, but I don't know how relevant it is directly to my protocol. So the things that I think are more like relevant to us specifically are probably more in the dependent hardware space.
Okay. Let's talk more about your leadership philosophy.
Sure.
As a CTO, you're handling a team which is based out in Jakarta, which is a beautiful state in the Indonesian country, and you visit there quite often. And you meet your tech team. So, what are the philosophies that you follow as a technologist yourself, but as a leader? How do you manage new features coming in, some new infrastructural needs? Maybe maintaining the high level of quality in the code as well. So as a leader, what are some of the principles that you follow in order to maintain such a high level of quality that you already follow?
I think I learned a lot in my time at Meta, which is weird because that's like super corporate Web 2.
Absolutely,
but it's I think it's a company with a very strong management culture that I learned a lot from. And one thing that you have there that you have, I think, in a lot of the FANG or whatever, is the philosophy that you hire the best people and then you let them do their jobs.
You don't tell them what to do?
No. So I do the specs for the build, for the protocol, and I provide them, and then I let the team build it. I review code, I review PRs as they come in. I don't have to sign off on them. They're able to sign everything and push live, and they have server access and everything. I keep up with it, especially too because our days don't really overlap. So I get up in the morning and I have PRs to look at, and it's like, oh, great, we're gonna. But I mostly just let them build, and that hasn't failed me yet. They're truly excellent. They're very efficient. They're really good at what they do, and I'm grateful for that. I think it's so important, particularly in a small company, to have a strong culture. So this is also why I make sure that I visit there like once every, once a quarter, because I know these guys now, right? It's not just like in theory, a face on a screen on the other side of the world. We get together, we go out and we have a beer, we have a meal, and we, when you need something, you could just ping them, and we have a friendly relationship, which is, I think, also incredibly important. Am I your boss? I guess, but it's a team, right? And I also think it's so important to be receptive to feedback and to be open to it and to make that known. And that's I guess the other thing that I would say is part of my management philosophy is to say, look, I get it. I'm the CTO. I'm your boss. I designed the whole thing. But if something's dumb, tell me. Or if something could be better, I try very hard to make sure, like, if people disagree with me, please, like, speak up. Everybody should feel entitled to a voice and an opinion, and we should hear you out. And then it's happened, right? Where I've spec'd something and my lead engineer is like, I don't think that works. And I'm like, okay, wait. And we sit down at the whiteboard, and then eventually I'm like, okay, you're right, that doesn't work. And he says, well, we did it this way. And I'm like, I think that works. And we prove it out again. So, 5 minds is better than 1.
Absolutely.
And I
absolutely.
I always want to make sure that people feel compelled to contribute.
Let's talk more about the challenges that you face as a CTO, and how do you face them, and how do you fix them, and how do you really make your team motivated all the time? How do you want them to do something which you want them to do, of course, because you're the boss, right? But what's that motivation theory that works for you?
It's a good question, and I probably haven't spent as much time thinking about it as possible, because I think right now we're very early stage. We've got, we're raising money, and the money's coming in, and it's, I think, very easy for people to see the traction. We all have equity, so there's, I think, an innate motivation there. I don't want to say, like, how do I motivate them? I pay them, but I mean, you pay people, right? But it's, I think, something where I'm again fortunate that my engineers, I think, share pieces of my mindset about like the tech is cool. Like
Correct.
and there are people that have been in not just Web3, but specifically in the Bitcoin ecosystem for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is a shared vision just in terms of like, okay, we're going to build it. We're going to build the thing,
Yeah.
you know, and then most of them came to Thailand this week, is not far from Jakarta, to be here for DevCon and for all the events and for the hackathon. So I think that too is super motivating, is to sit there and like, wow, it works. Like this is, I think for me at least, and I think a lot of engineers share this, the raw satisfaction when you push the thing and you hit the button and it goes and it works. And for the first time, you're like, oh my God, we built it. We actually built it. I think is very motivating. And I think my team shares this perspective.
And the feeling that you get when first users come in and your algorithm is working and the back end, the front end, everything is working fine.
It's so validating.
It's so good. It
feels great.
It feels great, yeah. Let's go down to some of the advice that you would want to give to future CTOs or some very new companies or some very new startup people who want to build something new, maybe on the Bitcoin ecosystem or anything in Web 2 or Web 3. What is the key advice that you would like to give them? How to build stuff, and what is the advice that you would give for building early stages of a company?
So I'm going to say something that is controversial, I think, because
let's create controversy. I'm open to creating controversy.
Yeah, like I said, I come from a security background, and I'm used to being in a context where you're constantly cleaning up other people's bad code or bugs and security vulns, right? There's a phrase that I've heard many times, which is like, first make it work, then make it work well, and then make it work fast. I disagree. Because, or reframe security as a baseline in terms of first make it work. I'm happy with that. I'm happy to let the UI wait.
You don't believe in that POC model, like just work on a proof of concept first and then improve it. You think you want to create the best product.
So
the first
yes
impression
and no.
should be
like,
good.
The best, no. But I'm very conscious that I'm building something, and specifically in Bitcoin, which is a money thing. And I'm going to ask users to trust money to my protocol. And we've seen some of the problems that come up in this space if your contracts are poorly written, if your keys are poorly managed. To me, it's just critical to be specific about building early stage in this space is to, yes, move fast, break things if you need to. Your UI can be crap. Your code can be slow, and those things are fine. But
Those things are fine.
But making sure, even on day one, that you are paying really close attention from like a security and functionality perspective. Build less things if you need to, build less features, but make sure that the things that are critical to the protocol work, because your company is always one vulnerability away from destruction.
Absolutely.
And that's not just because, oh, somebody could drain all of your accounts. They could drain fairly little money, but the trust is gone.
The trust is gone. Exactly. That's something that I think most of the protocols that are currently in this space have to be focused on more, because once you lose trust, I think in any industry, not only in the Web3 space, but also in the Web2 space, I think trust is the most important asset that a person can have. And if you somehow lose it, it destroys not only your past, but also your future. So you have to be extremely careful. In the blockchain space, I don't think we have a time where you can just build a POC and then, because there's real money involved. And when people are like putting in their hard-earned money, and if because of your lackness in seeing things through, they are able to lose that, that is something that you won't be able to give, like you won't be able to forgive yourself for that, right?
Right, and no one else is going to forgive you either. I think, in Web 2, you have a little bit of flexibility. You see a data breach at a company, and that their stock price takes a hit. Maybe their trust is diminished, but you can usually recover from that. And I think in Web3, and particularly when you're in an early stage, you just don't have that luxury.
Absolutely.
You are one bug. You are always one bug away from being completely wrecked, because right, like people put their money in it, and there's no shortage of competition in this ecosystem. And if I'm promising you that my protocol is secure and trustworthy, I need to be really, really sure that that's true.
Absolutely.
Because nobody is going to, and even you see things where you've seen these big, I don't know if hack is the right word, but there was something recently where they got drained of some amount of money.
They call it rug pull these days.
Yeah, you get rugged. But one of these companies got rugged, and their investors came in and paid out the difference, right? Made people whole. Said, okay, here's the $2 million that were stolen, because this company can't go on unless people get compensated. But I think it's already a losing battle at that point. It's good that people are getting their money back, but I wouldn't trust that system again if it were me. So
absolutely. That was a wonderful conversation, Perry. And
thank you.
I think everyone would be really interested in your ending thoughts, any advices that you would want to give to the future of blockchain, to the future of protocol developers. So any ending note that you would want to end this podcast on?
Sure. I hope that more people come into this space. I think the culture of it is fun, right? This like degenerate and meme, and it's like free and it's fun, and it's I get to go around and give my talks and like have bright pink hair, and it's cool. Like I like this about it, but I also think there is this a little bit of I don't know how to phrase this. I'm gonna be like, I don't know. Normies look at it and they're like, ew. I have a friend who's a cryptographer who, I'm a cryptographer, but when I said, okay, I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to go do crypto full time, she was like, ugh, and it's funny because the longer I've been in it, the more she's like, maybe I'll go do crypto. And I want to see more people who are, not that we don't love the degens and the 20-year-old kids that like crack something together in their basement, and that's awesome. And I love that about this space. But I hope, and I think politics aside, that there are changes where I'm from that probably will help with that soon. I hope it becomes more of a respectable industry, right? Not that we're not. I think we're a respectable industry, but I really hope that we see in the next 3-5 years crypto going from something that is kind of like a little bit of a joke.
Business. It's like a side business going to the mainstream.
Yeah, going from being something that's
what
like
we all want. Yeah.
Oh, crypto bros to like. It's the same as working in finance, right? It's like it's a legitimate global industry with real, with a lot of people that are working in it in a way that haven't been before, developers and economists and all of these things. Like for me, and it does feel different today than it felt even 6 months ago, and certainly, when I was working in crypto in 2017, it was a huge party, and we were like, oh, this is it, with the whole like ETH bubble. But I think there's a really different feeling that I have, at least today, being at all of these events and talking to people, where it feels so real in a way that it hasn't before. And I think that like the time is now to be like, it's real. It's becoming a real. I live in the DC area, and I was at an event in DC just a few weeks ago, and the president of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was speaking. Like serious government people are having to come. There was a White House advisor who was speaking, right? Serious government people are coming to the table in a way that they haven't before. Major financial institutions are coming to the table in a way that they haven't before. So I'm very like excited about that. And that for me is like, my protocol aside, or any particular coin or token aside, the whole industry becoming real in a sense.
Absolutely.
Is this is my hope for the future.
Thank you for your time, Perry.
Thank you.
And I hope everyone would really enjoy this podcast. Keep your eyes on Glittr Finance, guys. It is a beautiful protocol that she has written. She's the girl who has written. And we'll catch up with you soon. Sat Shri Akal.